everyone, welcome back to English class. Today we are going to start one new chapter, and the chapter name is The Portrait of a Lady, and it is written by Khushwant Singh. So what is the name of the author? Khushwant Singh. In this class I shall give you summary of this chapter, but at first I shall give you introduction. Let me tell you, my dear student, in next lecture, I will explain and I shall give the summary in Hindi also. This is English explanation, English summary. According to your need, you can understand the story. If you want to understand the story in English, you can see this video. Otherwise, there will be another video in which I shall give you summary and explanation, everything in Hindi. Let me tell you the introduction of this chapter before going to give you summary of this lesson. The story revolves around two important characters, Khushwant Singh and his grandmother. The story highlights the strong bonding between Khushwant Singh and his grandmother. And the moral of this story is that at the end of the story you will find out we must respect the old people. Generally, we see all around the world, all around the corner, old people or our grandmother, grandfather don't get as respect they deserve. So we must understand that grandparents sacrifice everything for the children or the grandson or the granddaughter. So we must understand the love and the care of our grandparents, and in their older age we must take care of them. Now let's move ahead towards the summary of this chapter. As I told you, the story revolves around the author and his grandmother. So the grandmother was an old woman with a wrinkled face because she was old. And the author had always seen her like this for the past 20 years. She appeared to be so old that he was not ready. Khushwant Singh was not ready to accept that once upon a time his grandmother was so young and pretty. Who had a husband. She was short, fat, and slightly bent. The author had seen his grandfather's portrait, an old man with a turban and a long white beard covering his chest. For the author, his grandfather didn't seem like a man who could have a wife and the children because he was looking older then. He was looking very much old man, and that is why it was unbelievable. It was impossible. That means the author was not ready to accept that the man could have wife and the children. But you could say that his grandfather was looking like a man who could have lots of grandchildren because he was looking very, very old in the portrait. But his grandmother was just opposite. His grandmother used to move around the house in the spotless white with her one hand resting on her waist. Because of her older age, she was not able to walk properly like the other person, and that is why she was quite bent. And she used to keep her hand on the waist to support her during walking. And she was very religious lady also. She always used to keep herself busy in counting the beads of her rosary. You must have seen so many old people having one mala, and they used to repeat the Ram Nam or Ram 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 like this. So she was also very much religious lady, and she kept herself busy in counting the beads of the rosary. In the initial days, the author and his grandmother had very good relationship. She used to wake him up and get him ready for the school because the author was living with his grandmother, so she was very much caring for her grandson. She used to pack all the things, all the required things for the day. And she walked him to the school every day. Near the school, there was a temple also. So she used to visit that temple. So now, the author, along with other children, sat on the veranda and singing alphabets and the morning prayer. They both used to come back home together, and in their returning time, they used to give some stall chapatis to the dogs to feed them. In this way, you can understand that the lady was very much kind-hearted. The parents of the author who went to the city to settle in and called them. So once upon a time, what happens? Their parents, that means Khushwant Singh's parents, shifted in the new city, and they called the grandmother and the son. As they reached the city, finally the day came when they reached the new city. His relationship got a turning point. Although they shared the same room, the Khushwant Singh and his grandmother used to live still in the same room. They shared the same room, but still there was a turning point. What happens? Because in the village, his grandmother used to go to school to drop her grandson. But here in the new city, he started going to English medium school. So she was not able, she couldn't go along with him to his school to drop Khushwant Singh. Anyhow, she used to ask him about his days and what he had learned in the school. Sometimes he used to inquire about the teaching part, what was taught in the school. But because she was not very much educated, so it was not easy to understand for her whatever were being taught in Khushwant Singh's English medium school. She didn't understand anything as everything was in other language, that was English language. And that is why she started feeling very much lonely. And moreover, she found that in Khushwant Singh's syllabus in the new school, there was no any lesson about the God and the holy book, religious book. And that is why she found it's not good syllabus. As the days passed, Khushwant Singh grew older and soon went to the university. After completing his schooling, he went to the university. In the university, he had his own room, and this made their relationship very much so. It was the big turning point when he shifted. The first turning point was that when the author and his grandmother shifted to the new city, and another turning point was that when the author shifted to his private room when he joined the university. The distance between the grandmother and the grandson got widened. She stopped talking to everyone and spent her whole day sitting at her spinning wheel because, in the village she was keeping herself busy in giving food to the dogs, as well as she used to go to temple, and she used to go to school also to drop her grandson. But here, none of these were available. She could neither go to school to drop the author, and there was no also street dog. And that is why she just developed the new hobbies. So she started spinning the wheel, reciting the prayer and moving beads of the rosary with one hand. Still, what was the common? So still she was having the rosary, and she just kept herself busy in spinning the wheel and doing the prayer in the worship of the God. She had started giving food to the birds, and very soon the birds identified the love. The birds realized that the lady was very much kind-hearted, and the lady breaking bread into pieces and feeding it to the birds was her daily routine. And the bird would sit on her legs, her head, some even on the shoulder of the lady. That means the bird started loving also the grandmother. The birds also started feeling the love, the deep love of the grandmother. Soon, the author decided to go abroad for future studies. She came to the railway station to leave him off. She was not sentimental. She was busy in reciting her prayer. She kissed on the forehead of her grandson. It was not easy to send her grandson, but she did not want to express her emotion in front of her grandson, and that is why she did not show any reaction at the time of the departure of her grandson, because she understood that it will give a negative impression and the author will not be able to concentrate, and that is why very silently she kissed him on the forehead and she just said him bye bye. After 5 years, when his studies completed, he came home, and she was there. At the time of the departure, she went to the station to drop her grandson, and luckily, she was still there to pick her grandson from the station. But the author was little upset from inside. Why? Because the author was not very much sure whether he could see his grandmother or not because of her older age. But both were lucky for each other. And the author found his grandmother was still the same as she had been 5 years ago. Finally, she just hugged her grandson with her arms and didn't say a word. She could feel the love of her grandson. She was very happy on the returning of her grandson. One day, she didn't recite her prayer, but she invited the women of the neighborhood, and she got a drum and started singing. She just wanted to express her happiness on the arrival of her loving grandson. And she just enjoyed the day very much. And just the next morning, she was ill with mild fever. Finally, the doctor was called, and the doctor said that there was nothing to worry about, but she was sure that her end was near. The doctor couldn't identify that her death was very much near. He simply said to the author, there is nothing to be worried about and she will be okay. But the religious lady, the grandmother, knew everything. She was very much sure that her death was very much near. She didn't want to waste her time talking to anyone in the family anymore. And that is why she started doing prayer lying on the bed. She died, and so her body lay on the bed, lifeless. As they prepared for her funeral for the last rite, they saw all the sparrow sitting in the veranda around her mourning her death. The next morning, she was no more. She paid the debt of the nature. And everyone was very much sad at the home, in the family. But it was not only the family members who were very much sad. It was also the birds who were very much sad. Sparrows were also very much sad. You can understand it. When the birds or the sparrow were given some food to eat, they denied. They didn't took any single piece of bread thrown by author's mother. And as the body was taken for the last rite, the birds flew away. In this way, you can understand not only the family members, but birds also, or the sparrows were also very much sad. And they expressed